you grab the attention of a room full of university students juggling jobs, demanding schedules, constant digital distractions? Some classrooms require more than subject matter expertise. They demand real engagement. Now, on today's show, we're digging into the mindset of the modern student and speaking strategies that make your message stick in that environment. And we got an adjunct professor who has got some ideas on just how to get attention and hold it. You ready? Let's go. Today's guest, Lloyd Bruce, is a visionary business coach and consultant and professional speaker. He's also an adjunct professor known for keeping students engaged with dynamic, real-world lessons, and he empowers audiences and clients alike to launch their ideas into orbit and achieve transformative growth. I'm going to let him take it from here because he'll do a better job at this than I will. So, Lloyd, let's hear about your journey. Tell us about yourself.
How are you doing, Rob? This again, Lloyd Bruce here. My journey, let's start all the way back from when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I was in front of my relatives and my parents and talking to them about the Starship Enterprise. I used to build model kits with my dad, and had a blast doing that, and one of those model kits was the Starship Enterprise. So I love to talk about the workings of the ship itself. So, and I would do that kind of ad nauseum because my relatives were like, okay, one, they didn't understand what the heck I was talking about, and two, I would talk about it all the time. So I was kind of obsessed. So that was my first, foray into public speaking. And then fast forward to a time when I was in high school. I entered a contest, and that contest ended up leading to a space shuttle experiment. And we can talk about that a little bit later. And, long story short, I ended up going into the corporate environment, and as well as eventually got into being an adjunct professor and teaching students about how to come up with business ideas from unconventional sources.
Right. Cool. Would you consider yourself a Trekkie, sir?
Absolutely. So I like all things science fiction, Star Trek, Star Wars, comic books, you name it. I'm there.
He's the guy. Got it. Yeah. I'm not really. I wouldn't call myself a Trekkie, but I did watch, in the '60s, the Star Trek, and kind of moved into. Mine was Next Generation. I like that one a lot, and there've been a lot since. And don't worry, folks, we'll get working. But two Trekkies just kind of linking up here. No worries. Yep. But that's the one I like. The problem solving that goes on there. So there's more to it than I think people who aren't watching.
Absolutely.
Particularly once we got done with Kirk, who seemed to be dating most of the aliens in the universe.
He was busy. Yes.
We got Picard, who was actually solving problems. But that's for another show. Talk to me about that experiment that flew in. You flew it on the Space Shuttle Discovery?
Sure. That was back in high school. My chemistry teacher approached me and said, "Hey, there's this contest called the Shuttle Student Involvement Program, and would you like to participate?" So, being very enthusiastic about space, I ended up kind of going back to a little bit of my roots, back to Star Trek. The Enterprise is made out of a fictitious metal called titanium that's made out in space. Mm-hmm. And then I fell back into my comic books, which is Wolverine, the guy with the claws.
Right.
His skeletal structure is made out of a fictitious metal called adamantium. And again, made out of space. So now you're starting to see a theme there. And then I remembered Skylab. Skylab was NASA's first space station, and they did some metallurgical experiments there. And so all of this gelled together, and I came up with this experiment that was heating up a titanium alloy, and titanium is heavily used in the aerospace industry, heating it up in a weightless environment. And one thing led to another, and proposed the experiment, and was very fortunate uh, to have McDonnell Douglas, the old aircraft company. They sponsored it and built it, and we put it on not only the Discovery, it was actually on the Challenger, the one that had the accident,
Hmm.
and then they put all the experiments, rebuilt everything, and then put them on the Discovery. So had a blast. Had a
Wow.
great, very good time.
So you'd be a tough guy to beat in two truths and a lie, because that would be a rough one. And after that, yeah, right.
Right.
All right, let's talk about the classroom a little bit.
Sure.
Every now and then I get invited by the universities to speak a little bit, and I noticed, that is one distracted group of participants. So, what's the
Right.
first thing that you're thinking about as a presenter when you walk in front of them and you got their hour and their minds are all over the place? What's your first move?
Sure. First move is put yourself into their shoes because just as you said, they're distracted. They've got half a dozen classes that they're trying to juggle. They're trying to possibly look at financial aid and funding, all sorts of different things. So the thing you want to do to capture that attention is help them to understand that you're there to help them with growth, with
Right,
a finding new resources, finding new ideas that can springboard them. And I specifically teach an entrepreneurship class. So
right,
that class is really focused on finding new viable ideas that they can grow into a business. And whether it be a single solopreneur type of business or maybe even growing into something, full scale with hiring individuals, etc. So that's the first thing that starts to say, maybe I should listen to this guy.
right. All right, so let's
And
pause right there
yeah,
for a second because I really like that. I could have given 10 answers and none of them was going to be focused on them yet. And yet you immediately put yourself into their shoes. Now, when we work with their parents or we work with adults, we refer to that as kind of a WIFM. All right. That's an acronym. What's in it for me, right?
yeah,
Which is one way that's our way of focusing,
yeah,
of
yep,
just appealing to that sense of greed. And I don't look at that as people hate the word greed. I think it's how we use it. I kind of hope that the students or the adults are feeling a little greedy. In other words, I hope this professor has something that's going to be interesting for me today.
absolutely,
Because what's
yes,
our alternative, Lloyd? I don't care one way or the other. I'll take
right,
the first one, right?
hmm
So I
hmm
like that. I like that. Even in the university, you're still going that way. Tell me because on entrepreneurship class at American University, I went in a couple times and spoke there, and I went into one of those classes. Are you running any simulations for them, or how do you take the theory and make it real world to them?
right. Well, we do it two different paths. One
Hmm.
is the textbook, which
Okay.
is designed to be more real world case studies, uh, interactive. They have videos that we plug in here and there, and then it really is the kind of the theory, but somewhat grounded in reality of entrepreneurship. But then I take it from a different angle as in practical matters of okay, so my goal usually with the class is when you leave my class, you're going to know how to set up a business from start to finish. And I'm going to also sprinkle in some of the newer business models that are out there right now with literally you can overnight set up a business because of the wonderful world wide web and all of these things at your fingertips. So I try to expose them to things like, say, print on demand, and where you're making up say, a t-shirt design, for instance, and you're taking that design, putting it up on a platform that can actually sell that
Hmm.
design, and being print on demand means you have no inventory. You don't have to worry about any of the shipping or anything of that nature. The print on demand takes their cut, that platform takes their cut, and you get the profit. But you've got a viable business that you set up just like that.
Wow. It's funny. I also have done some work at University of Houston, where they have actually a selling college, and they'll have a mixer, and part of look they're selling right. So part of it is market this mixer, and sell it to some of the vendors, and let's get some people in here.
Right,
But
right.
I so appreciate the universities because don't get mad at me, Lloyd, but I've been a little hard on them through the years in terms of some of the old school, pardon the pun,
Right,
but the
right.
old school approach, which is very theory driven. I don't know how you can't, as if you're going to teach people about entrepreneurship, how you can't give them a taste of a business of some sort, because I've always dreamt of writing a book that looked good on paper. There's a lot about being an entrepreneur that looks good on paper until you execute, and which is not a big
Absolutely.
problem as long as you react. But how do we know what to react to if we're still in the book, right?
Right, right, absolutely, and that's what we do at it. I'm an adjunct at the University of Missouri St. Louis,
Hmm.
and we have a center, the Entrepreneurship Innovation Center, and it is as that as I just said, it's focused on entrepreneurship. So we have different competitions for the students so that they can participate, and actually they just expanded this to the entire student body. If you have an idea that you think is viable, you come into and participate into a pitch competition.
Hmm.
And we bring in folks from all around the St. Louis area, business owners, the students, the faculty, etc. And those individuals get to pitch their ideas, just like they were doing sort of a Shark Tank type
Right.
type of deal, and they get that real world experience, firsthand, and it's pretty innovative.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah,
Absolutely. And puts them under a little bit of pressure. That's not a bad thing, by the way.
yeah,
Remember,
absolutely.
our life doesn't depend on this presentation. We're just pretending it does.
Right.
When they come
There you go.
out, it's a little bit different. Is there a model you teach them on how to pitch an idea?
Well, one thing that I do initially is we first couple of weeks in the class, I take them through a sort of an icebreaker. I will randomly tell them to pick, numbers, and then we put them into smaller groups. And I tell them, you have 15 minutes to come up with ideas for a business. And then in the last 5 minutes, you will narrow that down to one particular idea. And then you have to present that to the rest of the group.
Okay.
So that helps to, as I said before, break the ice, because a lot of times the students are sitting in there and they don't have time to meet one another. And
Right.
so you're trying to emphasize, that collaborative effort, emphasize that idea generation type of aspect, and then that helps to get them in that presentation mode. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I really harp on, is getting in front of your peers and being ready for that pitch competition.
Yeah. Which I think would certainly create some interest. And let's go there. There's two battles we have as educators. One is to get their attention, and the other is to hold their attention. So we
Yes.
can have a great story and something really lined up and come out, and you can see them moving towards us. But then we got to sustain it.
Yeah.
Give me some thoughts or ideas that you have of, all right, you're rolling,
Yeah.
and I want to make it a little tougher on both of us. I have certain
Sure.
modules that are very easy to teach. In other words,
Right.
and some of them we have to teach, and it's really important. But it's not the sexiest curriculum. We'll never tell the
Right.
group that, but
Yeah.
you and I both know this is going to be sort of a grunt work. How do you
Yeah.
sustain the interest when you've got sort of the tougher curriculum? Sorry to put the pressure
Sure.
on you on that one, but
Oh, no, no,
that's where we make our money, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Well, actually, what I do is I tap into my network of business owners. So, depending, let's say, for instance, if it's the topic of accounting, ooh, and budgeting, I go and tap into one of my, one of actually one of my neighbors,
Right,
and she is a CPA, and I put her either on a video chat, much like the Zoom like we're doing right now, or if that person is accommodating, they'll come in and be right there in front of the students.
right.
So they can present real world cases on why accounting, budgeting is important. And then the student can then, pepper them with questions and they get that firsthand knowledge. So that's, there's, the budgeting aspect is not the, probably the most scintillating of things, but they get that firsthand knowledge to drive it home the importance of that topic. So that's how you keep that attention. This is, I can spout off all of this out of the book all I want, but bringing somebody in that's living and breathing it, that's how you really resonate with them.
Yeah, very smart. Years ago, 20 years ago, I was working for the Farmers Home Administration. It was a contract job, actually. Let's make that 30 years ago.
Okay.
Uh, but we were automating, and it was a 2-day program on automating a field office. Wow.
Mm,
But I will tell you that I love guest speakers. I can't always get them. We didn't have Zoom at the time. But I got the guy who was actually he just cleaned up the office every day.
right.
And just to talk about how the automation was sort of simplifying, producing less waste. And
Right.
I'll never forget, he came in because I said, can you give me like 5 minutes? It's a 2-day program, Lloyd, but just to tease it a little bit, we got a guest speaker coming in tomorrow.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
had a little bar chart of garbage that he had put together. Of showing how much on one column and how much less, and wads of paper kind of glued on. I got
Yeah.
to tell you, it was the greatest thing in the world. So I love the idea, and I just want to encourage people to remember that. Look, we can look for the home run guest, but the reality is, almost any guest
Yes.
it's a change of voice, right? It's a change of pace.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, good on you. How about competition? I would think with entrepreneurs, you might be able to develop a level of competition of ideas. Have you ever done that?
Yeah, from a competition standpoint, you mean as far as
Pitch
the
an
students
idea. Pitch an
themselves? Yeah.
idea. Show me how you'd bring it to, out to the
Oh,
public.
yeah.
Walk us through the whole thing. And not only will we grade it like a normal presentation, but listen, I'm a guy who believes that competition will kick up the energy in a room. So I don't
Right.
know, maybe not on the university side, but with the adults, I've got all kinds of competitions I'm running.
Right. Right. Well, the you speaking of competition, that's where that competition that I just spoke to you about, where the pitch competition,
Right.
you know,
Oh yeah.
that's a classic
Mm.
example of getting the students engaged first off, but we also give prizes. In years past, we this competition has evolved, but in years past, they had a major competition where it was uh, five winners, and each winner would get $50,000.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and that was 50,000. They could do pretty much anything they wanted. And one winner ended up getting a food truck. Another was a person that made homemade ice cream, but on a large scale. So she bought a new uh, processing unit to pump out more ice cream.
How big was this
So
competition, Lloyd? How many groups were in this competition?
there, let's see, again, previous generation, that was, we had, if I remember correctly, over 300 applicants and narrowed it down to, I think, 20 that actually got to the pitch competition, and then narrowed that down to five
Mm,
winners.
wow.
So yeah, and there's some very, very good success stories out of that. They one young man, teenager, he had an idea of putting uh, air fresheners in in vehicles, and they were made out of essential oils, things that were good for the environment and smelled good. And he has gone and done great things with that business. So again, it's it's proven that if you have some competition, you dangle some good prizes, it's going to stir the juices, the creative juices, and the competitive juices of the students and of your participants, and
Yeah.
you come up with some
Uh,
great stuff.
and let me put an addendum on there. Or keep drilling
Sure.
down on that. That is, first of all, that's a home run. But we can't always get that kind of prize money with that many people.
Right.
So look, we dial it down a little bit. And meaning, okay, so now we just got our class. But,
Yeah.
we can still have competition in that class. And it doesn't have to
Oh yeah.
sometimes it's just something homemade there with a little plastic trophy. People
Yep.
just want to win something. And,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, sometimes, particularly in a corporate environment, I've actually pulled back on the prizes a little bit because I don't want them to focus. It's really not about the prize today.
Right.
Just it's sort of the win, the victory.
Right. Right.
Real fast, I had a guy at Xerox one time who was telling me, I'm getting in trouble with your prize idea, and I said, what's happening? He said, well, I was asking for the best answer to a question, and then giving out $100 bills, and I said, and some people thought one question should have been rated above another, and
Right.
say,
Right.
that we don't want. We don't want to distract with the competition. We can play with the competition, even
Right.
on your questions, Lloyd. Right? Just you know what? I got whatever from a Star Trek medal. For the
Yeah.
first person who can tell me fill in the blank, and that's the kind of fun also that we
Yep.
can have with a group. We don't have to do it for 4 hours. Every 20
Right.
minutes or so, let's do something that pulls this
Right.
group back in.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, that's perfect. Yeah, I mean, like you said, give little tokens out.
Right.
It might be a food prize or something like that. I've been in groups where you might have bags of candy or
Yep.
candy bars or
Yep.
whatever, and people start looking at, ooh, I want those Twix over there, and they start going after them. So, but yeah, that absolutely, it doesn't have to be big
No.
pie in the sky stuff.
I'll give you one that I used some years ago when I was at Xerox, and I'm not sure whether management liked it or not because from the outside looking in, I'm not sure they quite got it. But imagine you got 6 students to you, 6-to-1 ratio for 2 weeks. We're in that room for a while. I had something where if they got something right, they won the for today. I'm as smart as Rob award, and I would had a Velcro in front of all seats. I had a little thing I push it in front of the seat, and it would hang there for the day. And
Right.
it didn't really mean anything, but every now and then I'd say, I think it's about time for break. But Lloyd, you're as smart as me today. Do we break now? I was like, oh yeah, we break. Okay, well, Lloyd says break, it's break. And that's the kind of fun we can have with a group.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning you can see, let's not obsess on it. Let's just have fun with it and keep this
Yeah.
energy going. Right?
Yep, absolutely.
Can you
Absolutely.
describe a moment when you realized, as I could give you more stories, when these little approaches we have didn't work and you needed to shift your delivery a little bit? It may not have been as out there as where I'm at,
Yeah.
but you had a delivery idea, it looked good on paper, you're 20 minutes in and you're going, not flying.
Hmm. Well, it kind of goes back to the icebreaker
Yeah.
that I just mentioned. If you do that too many times,
Mm,
it loses its effectiveness.
right.
And I learned that third time in, third or fourth class later down the road. And I'm like, oh, this is not, I could even see it on the students' faces.
Right.
They're like, oh, not this again, so you have to freshen it up.
Yeah.
And so that's what I had to do. Pivot, try to find some other activities
Right.
that would, resonate with them. And that's when, we start talking about unconventional sources for inspiration. So I would start talking to them about television programming and things that are on TV right now. There's a show called oh it's gosh, it's with Amanda Cosgrove. It's like an educational TV show that comes on Saturday morning, and she talks about topics that have young women engineers and scientists, and they talk about all these different topics. So I start to introduce that to the students because a lot of times they're so fixated on YouTube and streaming services and different things, they're missing out on what's sitting on TV.
Right.
So, that's another way to hopefully spin it and engage them and say, hey, why don't you watch that and see if you come up with some ideas, and maybe I'll give you some extra credit points. You
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
that
Isn't that an irony, though? You're pushing them back to the television.
boy,
I'm making sure my ears are open and I actually heard that. But I could see where you're going with that. And I want to also tell you something that I really appreciate you're talking about. You've said it a few times. I think trainers, keynoters, we don't have to worry about this as much. But those who are really in the pit doing workshops, I think that people underestimate the value of an icebreaker, Lloyd. I really do. I think they look at it and they go, I don't know if I have time for an icebreaker. And I agree with you. If you got a 2-hour icebreaker, you're right. But there's so many moves we can make, 10, maybe 15 minutes. I'm talking about we have 1, 2, maybe a 3-day workshop. And you can bypass that icebreaker if you want. Go ahead, jump in your material. I think you're going to pay for it for the next 2 days with a room that really isn't coming together.
right.
What are your thoughts
Right.
about that?
No, I absolutely agree. The students today, they got so many distractions, and my humble opinion, their social skills are not as honed as maybe when you and I were coming
Oh,
up.
because we rode the bus home and we were playing, ball at Larry's house or whatever,
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So so yeah, so they're texting a lot. Yeah, so they socialize that way, but just interacting with a new person in a classroom environment or whatever environment,
Yeah.
it's a little lacking. So that's where you have to use those icebreakers to kind of break that ice
Right.
and keep the interaction going.
Yeah.
So very important to me.
Yeah, me too. It's time very well spent. But think it out. I mean, some of the more basic ones are we can just pair them up and let, Lloyd's going to introduce Rob and Rob's going to introduce Lloyd, but we'll have, a scale of 2 or 3 things. I'm always putting a hobbies question in there because
Oh yeah.
the educator in me says, now that I know that Lloyd's into Star Trek, if something's not connecting, I could pivot and maybe connect it there. And I don't mean that in a cheesy way. I mean, how you were talking about that metal. Well, when an entrepreneur, and sometimes that's what somebody needs to hear to get it to click.
Right.
So
Right.
they're never wasted questions, but we just keep the throttle down. I mean, we don't want to go on and on. Some people spend a little too long introducing the other, and that's where it's
Yeah.
the facilitator who needs to, physically move in and just kind of clip it and move it. They'll be okay.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
agree.
Lloyd, last question for you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Anyone preparing to speak to students, and maybe not like me, who every now and then just kind of gets pushed into a University of Maryland class or whatever. What 1 or 2 thoughts would you give them that might help them connect a little better? Because our instinct is they love me in my workshops with the adults. Kids are going to love me, not necessarily.
Right, right.
So give me a couple thoughts for that if I'm pivoting.
Okay, so first thing I would say, and you jog my memory, when I introduce myself and start to interact with the class, one of the things that I ask is, give me your name, but also, what's your favorite comic book character or movie character? And you get various answers, and that helps again to one, it puts them at ease, and it shows that you're connected, not just in a, let's see, I guess for lack of a better term, in a old fashioned way.
Right.
You're kind of connected to the modern world. So that helps to break that ice and keeps, the attention. Uh, Another thing would be, again, I'm a very pop culture oriented guy.
Yeah, I'm picking
So
up on that.
yeah, yeah. See, I mean that, like when you say TV, movies, all that, I grew up on that, and that just, that drove me. It still drives me.
Right.
So it's really helping them to get that inspiration out of those different sources. For me, it's when I see some concept introduced on a TV or movie, uh, I'm instantly going off to say, "Who? How does this work? Or what is the whole thing behind that? And then how can I apply that into a real world
Right.
type of idea, or or business?" And
Yeah.
then that hopefully gets them to start to expand their minds when they see something in front of them and say, that could be a viable invention or innovation or idea to take things
Yeah.
forward.
Lloyd, I refer to that as giving him the big picture. And it's funny because, I don't want to keep dipping back and going, when I went to school, we didn't even have pencils.
Yeah.
Uh, but the reality is that when I went to school, if you raised your hand, and I remember doing it once or twice, once in math class, and trying to form the question, just give me how I'm going to be using this logarithm thing that
Right.
you've got me going on. And you would have thought I was in the play Oliver asking for more porridge.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it was considered almost rude to ask the question, whereas here you and I are having a conversation, and we on both sides of the fence. I'm representing the adults, you're representing the students, and both of them we don't even need to wait for the question. If we want to be effective communicators, we need to offer that in the first 3 or 4 minutes of here's the big picture. Because guess what? At the end of the day, you're going to learn better, be more motivated, know how it fits in. If I do that, I'm helping us both.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I would add to what you were saying, which is my mistake, so I'll give it to you from the guy who's gone in there and flubbed it up once or twice. I don't do it now. My instinct was go real hard to the hoop, basically. I'm gonna
Okay.
come in and really show them what a professional speaker and energy and all this looks like. They're gonna love me, and I think they questioned my authenticity a little bit because I was the adult that was trying too hard. There's
Right.
an old
Right.
proverb: when its time has arrived, the prey comes to the hunter. It's not that I came in sleepwalking, but I actually dialed it back just a hair and
Right.
realized
Right.
that was earning their respect a little bit. And then I could show them, well, normally I'm actually at a higher speed than this.
Yeah.
But I just, I felt I was going a little too fast, too hard initially.
Right.
That was my instinct. And I think when you bring in outside speakers that aren't educators like you might see that occasionally. And, bless their hearts, they're just trying a little too hard. We don't have to, they don't want us to try all that hard. Just do the things that Lloyd's telling you to do. Give them the big picture. Let them
Yeah,
know what's
that's
in it for them to learn it. And let them know who you authentically are. And I think that we'll get the job done.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right,
That's
man.
spot
Well,
on. Yep.
well, I've enjoyed the conversation a
Yes.
lot.
Same here. Yes.
How do people get a hold of you, Lloyd? If they want to reach out and talk to you.
The absolute best way is my LinkedIn profile.
Okay.
I know everybody always says, have a website and all this stuff. LinkedIn, that's the best way. DM me, and my contact information is there.
Yeah, and that's how you and I hooked up. I'm looking at your LinkedIn right now. It's linkedin.com/in, but it's Lloyd Bruce. Is there a one after your name there?
Yes, it is.
There's
Yes,
another one of you.
I guess so.
Okay, but
I don't know
all
who
right.
that is, but
He's number one. So it's
Yes.
Lloyd Bruce one if you're looking, but Lloyd Bruce
Yep.
will get you there. I don't think
Yep.
there'll be a sea of them. Look, I've really appreciated the conversation. I thought did a great job, and I just want to thank you for being on the show. I'm really
And
grateful.
thank you very much for having me. This
bet.
was a blast. So
Good. Thank
Yeah.
you, Lloyd. Well, I got to feel Lloyd and I talked for about 15 minutes a week or two ago, and I thought, this guy will be just fine. Anyway, thanks so much for being on the show.
All right, thank you, Skin. Thank you a lot.
You bet. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please follow, rate, and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. For more resources and to connect with Rob, visit thepresentationwhisperer.com.